Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Sunday Messages. We are talking about consumption fasting today. Yes, we're having another conversation about it. 'Tis the season. Apex starts very, very, very soon. I am so excited. This is going to be my 5th long-term fast, which I'm very, very excited about. And I am just so excited that I get to facilitate these conversations and kind of be, I don't know, be the beacon of fasting magic for all of you. Okay, so couple things about this that I want to address first. I'm going to be answering a question I got on YouTube, and then I got some questions on Instagram about fasting as well that I want to answer. I also want to talk about the detox phase of Apex, which I consider to be the first week is really where detoxing is happening. I'm going to explain that. And yeah, that's what we're going to be covering. So, quick change that I've made to Apex this year. So, unlike before, I've added a solid week of prep. So instead of it being an 8-week program, the protocol itself is 8 weeks, but I've added a 9th week where we just do prep. There's quite a lot of prep involved for Apex. There's a lot of things that we need to cover. There's a consumption fasting workshop that I created where I go into all of the nitty-gritty details of fasting, what to fast from, the different apps and restrictions and boundaries that I implement. All the nitty-gritty details are in that consumption fasting workshop. So that is something that you're going to do the first week. We also have a prep call the first week, and I'm opening Voxer the first week. So if there's any questions, if you're still hammering something out, if you need to experiment with some things during that first week, you're fully prepared for when we go all the way into it on October 1st. What I've found over the past few rounds is that, people want to get in during that 11th hour, which is fine, but Apex does require prep. And so because of that, what ended up happening was people would spend the first few days of the protocol kind of fumbling around, getting caught up on things more than I want you all to experience. And so this time, application cutoffs. So you have to secure your seat by September 22nd or nothing, so that you get that full week of prep and you go into October 1st really, really, really strong, which is what I want, because it's like every day that you're fully fasted counts, and every day that you're doing the protocol counts. It's very fast, it's very intense, and a lot happens in a really short period of time. And so I really want everyone to make the most of their time and of their commitment to the containers. So there's a sooner and earlier deadline for this round of Apex than before. And there's more stuff that we do during prep week than before. So get your seat. September 22nd is the cutoff, or when all seats are filled, whatever comes first. All right, let's talk about consumption fasting. So for those of you who are new here, Apex is my intensive that I run twice a year. I run a spring round and an autumn round. And it includes an 8-week fasted process. So you're 6 weeks fully fasted, and then 8 weeks 2 weeks reintegration to wrap up that 8-week process. Now, what I've done is with Apex specifically, there's the Apex protocol, and fasting is just kind of baked into the cake. But I've talked about doing a consumption fast, is what I call it, kind of a freestanding solo consumption fast, which is where you're just self-initiating into not consuming. So that's just the distinction if I'm referring to Apex I'll refer to it as Apex, which means the protocol. And if I'm talking about fasting, I'll just say consumption fasting or fasting. I've done also, if you're really interested in this topic, if you want to learn more, I've done podcast episodes on it. Look at the Apex playlist on my YouTube, and I've done a ton of episodes on it. So let me answer this first question. Can you speak more to the fast process in Apex? What is it and how do you hold it? I'm not going to go too in depth just because it's going to get a bit redundant because I've done so many episodes on it. But consumption fasting, just to summarize it, is you're completely stripping away anything that you numb with. So in Apex, we do a hybrid fast. We do substance fast, so no mind-altering substances with the exception of caffeine, and no consumption fast, no consuming. So that would mean no TV, no binging podcasts, no, I also have everyone restrict personal development books as well. No social media, if I already said that. Pretty much anything that you consume, and there's a whole list of potentials that could be, but the gist is no consuming media, TV, podcasts. I think that's the big one. And then I do have book restrictions. There's a whole bunch of other ones, but that's more of like some nitty-gritty stuff that I go over during prep week in Apex to really customize it for everyone inside. I don't want to give all the options because I don't want people to be under the impression that everything must be fasted from. That's more of an individual basis that I custom tailor for people. But generally for the general public, if you cut out social media, TV, including movies, podcasts, and personal development books, I would say that's consumption fasting. How do I hold it? So this is the difference. I think the only people who have to hold it are people who do consumption fasting when it's self-initiated. In Apex, you don't really have to hold it because it's like we're doing a full protocol. So I found that the people who go through Apex don't really struggle with fasting. That's not any feedback that I've gotten. It's more that there are other priorities and other things that always come first. So the temptation to consume is much, 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 much lower. It's greatly reduced in Apex. The first couple of weeks that you're doing a consumption fast, or more particularly the first week, you're habitually grabbing for your phone and, you're accidentally opening apps. You're doing habitual stuff like that. But in terms of temptation, if you're doing a solo fast, just a plain consumption fast, that is way more difficult. The feedback that I've been given from people who have attempted a consumption fast is that doing it on your own, doing it plain, is extraordinarily hard because people really struggle having a huge void of empty space, because that's where most people are tempted to do all sorts of different things and to consume. And it's like this, what do I do with myself? And you're resting more on your own willpower, because it's the same thing. Let's say, what is it called? Lent, where you choose something to fast from. Well, if you're fasting from anything, it's like you just don't do it. It's not deep. You literally just don't do it. If you're fasting from chocolate milk, well, how do you hold it? You just don't drink chocolate milk. That's it. And, I understand that it's easier said than done, particularly when it's like so much is going on in the phone that there's so much addiction and there's so much temptation around consumption and around, I've had so many people go through apex, it's like they notice that they'll start doing weird stuff. Like now I'm looking through photos and old text messages and like needing to consume something, and that's how desperate the brain becomes around needing to be on the phone. So there is an element of just don't, that is part of fasting. Or in the same way, how do you do a substance fast? Well, you just don't drink, and you don't smoke, and you don't take any recreational pills. You know what I mean? So to summarize again, willpower, the just don't, has mostly to do with consumption fasting on its own. When you're in apex, I would be very surprised if fasting was difficult. It's way, way, way easier in apex than it is doing it on your own. The next part of your question, how do you hold it? Having extraordinarily firm boundaries with yourself. This is something a lot of people struggle with. I'm not sure. Like discipline in the modern sense is, I don't know, it's kind of, you oftentimes have like the hustle bro or the gym bro type of discipline. But when I think of discipline in the modern sense of discipline, I think of exercising personal restraint. Because again, well, what it looks like now culturally and socially is much different than how discipline looked in the 1950s. Now discipline is more of like, I'm choosing not to. I'm not giving myself permission. We are almost burdened by having permission to do anything at any time. And that is kind of an issue, because we have so many possibilities that discipline is basically like just saying no more often and telling yourself no and not giving yourself permission to just fuck around and do whatever you want all the time. Okay, let me include something else here, because this is related to the importance of fasting when it comes to your personal compass. Okay, so think about, you have God, your soul, divine source, however you have a relationship to the powers that be, if you will, that are leading you and giving you guidance 24/7. At any moment you're awake, you have guidance that is being showered upon you. And what I can tell you is that guidance is not saying you should be consuming and you should be numbing out with video games endlessly for hours and hours and hours a day, and you should never go out and bask in the sunshine. There's no way. There is no way. The consumption is coming from habit and it's coming from addiction. Those are the sources of consumption, okay? And a lack of discipline as well. I'll throw that in there. So you are now muddying your compass. And I would say that in order to really get in touch with your compass, you kind of have to strip away all of the numbing behaviors. That way you can actually feel, what are you even being called to do in this moment? And we want to rule out consumption in order to really fine tune what you're being called to. Because the problem is, as soon as people start consuming, they have a really difficult time with the amount of momentum that consuming creates. And it kind of takes on a life of its own, where it's just consume, 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 more, 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 more. How many of you are on multiple devices at a time? How many of you have a TV on? How many of you are on an iPad? How many of you are answering text messages on your phone? Many of us are being completely doused with consumption. Your higher self is not like, yes, this is where you're going to be spending the rest of your life. This is what you're going to be doing for the rest of your days. No fucking way. No way. That is not happening. And so consumption fasting, I find, is one of the best spiritual, how do I want to describe this? It's one of the best spiritual experiences that you can have because of how sensitive your compass becomes when you're truly fasted and when you're not giving yourself permission to engage with things that start generating negative momentum or generate numbness. Consumption leads to numbness. So a lot of the time, what's happening is people are overriding their compass with consumption. So you might think you're being led to consume, or if we were to say, Abraham Hicks talks about this, like, oh, just do what you want. I disagree in the sense that too many people are addicted to consumption for them to even be clear about that. Because if you have this little voice in your head that's like, get on your phone, turn on the TV, that's not coming from this like divine part of yourself. And so in order to really rule that out, we have to just take it away for a while and see what's going on under the hood. You know what I mean? So that's the main problem that I'm seeing for people, is having too much permission, too much willingness to just consume. And it's interfering with the divine guidance that you're being blasted with every day. Okay, here's the next question. Needing social media for work and yet not getting sucked in. How do I do this? And this is kind of similar to the next question. How to fast if I have an online business? Well, the simple answer is you post, but don't consume. That's it. There, and it's like, well, if you are, sorry, there's a leaf blower that's distracting me. I'm trying to focus. Hold on. Okay. I think the leaf blowers are gone now. Okay, let's talk about having an online business and fasting. Now, the thing is, if you do need to be on social media for work, because I know many of us do, it's like, well, when you're surrounded by, it's like if you get closer to consumption, you're going to be facing more temptation. That's just kind of how it is. So your willpower has to be extra hardcore, and your boundaries have to be extra hardcore when you're doing this. And you're going to find what happens for the first 2 weeks of Apex is you see just how bad it is. Okay. Or even the first 2 weeks of a fast, like you see how much habitual consumption you're actually engaging in and how desperate your mind is for consumption. And what this is really highlighting is the lack of fullness that you're experiencing in your life. And so it's like when someone's in Apex and they kind of like fly close to the sun, so to speak, right? You open TikTok, you're immediately shown a video. Your focus and your willingness to immediately add your video instead of consuming is where the magic happens. Or opening Instagram and just posting, like that is where, it really, you start walking the talk. You know what I mean? Like everyone wants to do a consumption fast until you're faced with that temptation, and then people start folding like a cheap chair. And so yes, it is more difficult to fast when you work on social media because you are getting closer. You're kind of opening up the same neural pathways of the bad habit. and you're deviating, you're having to consciously deviate from what you normally do. So you're fighting a lot of your there is like a battle that exists with that. So not getting sucked in, it's like, well, you just can't. Like you don't give yourself permission. It's, yeah, you understand that there's a risk of you getting sucked in, and you're conscious of that and you're aware of that when you open the app. And you're not opening it up willy-nilly, like, let's just see how it goes. I'm just gonna, like, you can't be casual with it at all. You have to understand that it is high stakes. When you touch the app, it becomes a high stakes moment for the sake of your fast and for the sake of your results. And this is what I mean by exercising discipline, like treating this seriously. And one of the reasons why people don't struggle with this in Apex in the way that they do when they're doing it alone is because they have paid to be in Apex. Like, you are paying a certain price so that you have skin in the game and you're not willing to fuck around. Like, if you're already investing time and energy and money to be here, there's way more likelihood that you're going to be deeply committed to what we're doing in this container and what the protocol really is, and to the fast, knowing that your personal results are going to be correlated to whether or not you show up for what we're doing here. This is why I call it an intensive, you know? So that's what I have to say there. Yes, you are going to be more tempted if you work on social media, so your boundaries have to be extra locked in. And then the other thing would be, I would say there needs to be extra structures in place if you work online. Just extra containers, extra parameters, extra apps that you use to monitor yourself and to restrict yourself. It's like there's a whole bunch of different things that I implement for myself because working online does make it a bit more complicated. And so this is something that I've gone over in depth in terms of like all the apps that I use, all the boundaries that I use, all of the time structure that I use, my attitude going into this. Like, I go in depth on this for a full hour in the Consumption Fast workshop, which obviously this is not that. How long have I been talking? I've already been talking for 22 minutes. So you can imagine what the Consumption Fast workshop, the full workshop, is like. And no, that's not available separately. That's Apex only. Okay, so let's talk about the detox phase of Apex. When people do Apex, because what you have to understand about just where we're at collectively. We're in a lot of consumption. We're immersed in a lot of distraction. We can easily drift away from ourselves and away from our own inspiration. The channel of our own inspiration ends up getting muddied from how much stuff we're around and how much information exists. And so the clarifying experience of Apex during that first week is quite intense for people. Because keep in mind, it's like not only are you're not just fasting, you're doing all of these other things that clarify your frequency and get it really sharp and really clear and really precise. And it's just a clarifying, a purification process during that first week. And so not only are you seeing all of the ways that you're kind of being held captive by addiction to social media or by consumption, but you're also experiencing the awareness of what is missing in your life. All of the different things that you've been numbing and putting a cap on with consumption all begin to come up to the surface in order to be digested and be metabolized, because emotional constipation is real. Like just undigested emotion that has been sitting dormant for a long time. And the thing is, this is not the same thing as processing. Processing is more of like the therapy speak, where it's like you sit and tell someone what your mother did when you were 6 years old. And then the therapist says, oh, and how do you feel about that? And they say, wow, your feelings are valid, blah, blah, blah. And nothing really happens other than you told someone about the story, and that's it, unless you have a good therapist who gives you adequate tools. But when I'm talking about emotional constipation, I'm talking about your physical body. So emotions have more of they're more okay, think about it like this. Thoughts are connected to the mind. Emotions are connected to the body. It's more of a sensation. It's something that you experience with your physical self. So a knot in your stomach, that's not a thought form. That's a sensation that is communicating via your body. So somatics are wildly important for your emotions. And so what happens, and of course, this is, I've got you completely covered when it comes to Apex on how to do this efficiently. This is one of the things that people experience consistently. I would say this is one of the biggest things that people say that they love about Apex is how quickly they move through shit. Like, oh, you have a family trigger come up? No big deal. Like it gets metabolized immediately. But if you've been emotionally constipated, then all of that has to come into your awareness emotionally. And when it does, your job is to metabolize it properly, somatically, working with the body more than the mind. You can't like do mental gymnastics in order to metabolize emotions when emotions are body-based. The thoughts may trigger emotions, but a lot of the time what people are dealing with is suppressed emotion that is not being moved physically, or a dysregulated nervous system, whatever. So this is also, if you read Kate's testimonial on the Apex page, she talks about specifically that very early on, she realized through doing Apex, like, oh my God, there are some really foundational pieces that need to change. She became aware of like some significant unhappiness that she was dealing with. And she wrote about all this in the testimonial. But it just highlighted a lot of what was going on that you can't see if you're numb. If you're numb, you can't feel it. And if you're numb for a long enough time, your tolerance for bullshit just goes through the roof. So now, instead of metabolizing it immediately, resolving it immediately, bringing it to a full loop, bringing it full circle through the body, bringing it to a point of completion, a lot of the time people take their emotions into this like peak place, but then it never resolves. There's no resolution to the emotional experience. And so one of the things that's very important is like, let there be completion within the body. That's what most of the, that's like the piece of personal development, let's say, that is really missing. That's the part of therapy that is missing, is like, it's not that deep. You just need to complete the cycle through the body. That's like the only piece that's missing. And that will make it move a lot faster. So anyway, the first week is often the most intense for people because you're seeing all your bullshit. You're seeing all of the ways in which you're not fulfilled in your life and all of the things that you're not doing right now that you've been ignoring or hiding in the closet from. You see all of your habits. You see all of the ways that you're going unconscious. You see all of the ways that you're numbing out. You see all of the ways that you're not digesting what needs to be digested. You're seeing all of the things that you're procrastinating on. You see it all. And depending on how much you numb, because that's really what makes the biggest difference. If you numb a lot, you're going to see a lot more. If you have relatively good emotional digestion and you are quite sensitive, then the clarifying process, that purification process, is going to have more of an impact on your compass. So the clarity of your decision making becomes sharper. The clarity of how you feel and what you know to be true about certain situations gets a lot clearer and a lot sharper. Your intuition is much, much, much more enhanced. So what you feel you're led to, the guidance that you're experiencing day to day, is much more potent. So those are the two different effects. Let's say the two different types of detox is you either see all of the things that you've been ignoring, or you have extreme crisp clarity. My personal experience, I haven't had anyone who's taken Apex speak to this, but this is something that I notice for myself, is sometimes I'll experience like headaches for the first couple of days. And I also think that has to do with like eye strain. Even if you spend a lot of time with screens and then all of a sudden you start giving yourself a break or looking at different things, like think about the range of eye motion that you're engaging with. I would love if there were studies on this, because eye motion and headaches, you know, those two things are in a relationship with each other. And so that's one of the interesting things that I've noticed. What else have I noticed during the detox phase? The weird behavior. I think I mentioned this earlier. Like you'll start doing weird things, weird habitual things. Like you won't be on social media, but you'll try to like weasel your way into doing some other bizarre behavior that's still on your phone. I made a joke the last time I had someone in one of my containers doing a consumption fast. I said there were some times that my brain would get so desperate that I would literally open up my calculator. I would start doing math. That's how like bad it was for a while. You know, and I will also say people who work on social media probably need this more than the average person. The average person who does not work on social media or doesn't spend a ton of time on social media, or if it's, you know, if they just are not immersed in it nearly as much, then this is not going to be as stark of a contrast as it is for someone who works on social media and spends a lot of time on the computer and, you know, in the online world, so to speak. Let's see, what else do I want to mention about this? I think that's it for now. What else do you need to know about fasting? I think that's about it. If there are a lot more questions, you're welcome to put them in the comments. You can message me on Instagram, DM me, whatever. Leave a comment on YouTube. Whatever you want, whatever is the easiest way to communicate. I will make sure that I read all the comments. Let's see. Let me get my calendar really quick. Okay, so this episode comes out on the 13th. Applications closed. So the last day to secure your spot is next Friday, the 22nd. So I'm going to do a couple more podcast episodes. If I get a lot of questions about this, or if you have any questions about Apex, let me know so that I can do a podcast episode on it and get all of those answered. Just make sure that you get that to me before, let's say, the 20th, so that I have time to actually record the podcast and get everything out. All right. So again, Get in Apex, get in Apex. Go check out the testimonials on the page. It is the golden child of my work. Honestly, Apex is the shit. The results are absolutely insane. My personal results have been absolutely insane over the years. I am so stoked. I have never, I mean, I told the story on a couple episodes ago. I told the story of how the last Apex round for myself didn't go how I wanted my personal results to go. So this time I am more motivated than ever, more inspired than ever for this to be like the best round, like the highest potential that I've ever reached for myself. So I'm very excited for everyone to be inside the container. If you have any questions about if it's right for you, you're welcome to message me. Let me know. Ask me things if you need to, if you want to chat about it directly. I'm here, I'm available. I would love to have you. And it's going to be a really, really great round. Oh, one more thing that I'll add. I might expand on this in a future episode. Maybe I'll do an equinox episode. The equinox is coming up, and I'm not surprised that Apex correlates with the equinoxes. This is just an excellent time to capitalize on that energetic shift. I'm going to explain why in an upcoming episode, so stay tuned for that. If you would like to let someone know about consumption fasting, send them this episode, let them know what's up. Go check out the Apex playlist on my YouTube. Check out all of those videos if you want more about consumption fasting, and I will talk to you all next time. Have a good one, everybody. Bye.